You think real-life zombies only exist in Hollywood movies? You are about to be proven dead wrong. This is a story with a twist so dark it shattered medical science. It's about a man who watched his own funeral from inside his paralyzed body. To understand this nightmare, we have to travel to central Haiti, in the sweltering heat of the Caribbean, to a sprawling government hospital. The date was May 2, 1962. A 35-year-old woman named Angelina walked through the heavy doors of that hospital. She gave the receptionist her brother's name and asked for his room. She walked down the dim, sterile corridors, pushed open a heavy wooden door and froze. On the bed lay her older brother, 40-year-old Clairvius Narcisse. His skin was gray, and 4 lines hooked into his hand. An oxygen mask was strapped tightly over his face. He was struggling desperately just to draw a single breath. Seeing him like this sent a massive shockwave through Angelina's body. Just 2 days earlier, Clairvius had walked into this hospital on his own. He stepped out of an auto rickshaw and collapsed right in front of the reception desk. Doctors found blood pouring from his mouth. He was vomiting blood. His blood pressure was dangerously high. They rushed him to the emergency ward, but nothing they did made sense. His lungs were filling with fluid on their own, a fatal condition called pulmonary edema. It would inevitably suffocate him to death. Now, Angelina stood at his bedside, watching her big brother die. The doctors entered the room, their faces grim. They admitted they had no idea what was happening to his body. Then Angelina mentioned a detail that confused everyone. That very morning, around 10 a.m., Clairvius had been at his older brother's house in perfect health. There was no sign of illness. How could he collapse into a fatal state within 5 hours? The doctors had no answers. They left. Alone with her dying brother, Angelina felt a deep, painful sorrow. Not just because he was dying, but because he was utterly alone. In total, there were 6 siblings, 3 brothers and 3 sisters. Yet not a single other sibling had bothered to show up. And that was Clairvius's own doing. Years ago, after their parents died, a bitter war erupted among the 6 siblings. The cause was Clairvius. Before their parents passed, he had taken them into his house, taken complete control, and secretly transferred all of their wealth, land, and properties into his own name. When the other siblings confronted him, demanding their rightful shares, Clairvius coldly rejected them. "Don't ever come to my doorstep asking for a single penny," he told them. "Our parents gave everything to me. I'm not sharing it with anyone." So Clairvius lived in absolute luxury, a beautiful bungalow, profitable lands, steady income. Meanwhile, Angelina and the other 4 siblings were reduced to impoverished daily wage laborers. They begged and threatened. Clairvius remained unmoved. Yet despite the hatred, Angelina believed that humanity dictates you must stand by your own blood in their darkest hour. So she sat by his side. She took his limp hand. For a few agonizing minutes, she just watched him listen to the slow, heavy rattling of his breath. Then, right before her eyes, Clairvius's breathing shattered. His entire body began to violently convulse. His muscles locked up, turning as rigid as stone. A horrific, wet, gurgling sound vibrated through the mask, the sound of air mixing with the fluid filling his lungs. He was actively choking to death. Terrified, Angelina jumped to her feet. She rubbed his cold hands, crying out to comfort him. For a single, fleeting second, Clairvius's eyes flew wide open. Then they began to roll back. His eyelids fluttered, then slid halfway shut, freezing into a lifeless stare. Angelina sprinted out of the room, screaming for the doctors. She dragged a physician back to the bedside. He pressed his fingers against Clairvius's wrist. Nothing. He checked his neck. Absolute silence. The body was completely motionless. The oxygen pumped into the mask simply leaked out the sides. The doctor turned to Angelina. "I am deeply sorry," he said. "Your brother is no more." Angelina arranged for his body to be taken back to his grand estate. The next morning, all the remaining siblings gathered for the final rites. They ordered a wooden coffin. Neighbors and local residents came to pay their respects. His cold body was lifted and placed inside the casket. With the upper half of the lid left open, the funeral procession moved through the streets toward the local cemetery, where a deep grave had already been dug. In those final heavy moments, Angelina stepped forward, took Clairvius's cold hand one last time, and offered her tearful goodbyes. She let go. The pallbearers lowered the wooden casket into the earth. The grave diggers began shoveling dirt over the coffin until the pit was completely sealed. One by one, the mourners left the cemetery. But the moment they left, something took place that defies the laws of nature. At around 10 p.m. that night, under pitch-black darkness, 2 shadowy figures slipped into the cemetery carrying shovels and pickaxes. They walked straight to Clairvius's fresh grave and began to dig. They dug furiously until their shovels struck the hollow wood of the coffin. They hoisted it out of the pit, laid it flat, and used crowbars to rip out the iron nails securing the lid. They looked down at the pale, motionless corpse of Clairvius Narcisse. Without wasting a second, they hauled his body out, laid it on the ground, then closed the empty casket, hammered the nails back in, and lowered it back into the grave. They shoveled the dirt back, patting it down until the earth looked completely undisturbed. No one would ever suspect the grave had been desecrated. Then they bound Clairvius's ankles and wrists with thick ropes, hoisted his limp body onto their shoulders, and vanished into the dense jungle paths. They walked through the entire night without stopping. At dawn, they hid the body in a secluded wooded area. As soon as darkness returned, they hoisted him back onto their shoulders and resumed their trek. They marched through the second night and the night after that. Would you believe me if I told you these men repeated this grueling ritual for nearly 20 consecutive days? For almost 3 weeks, they carried a dead body across the rugged terrain of Haiti, from central Haiti all the way to the north. On the 20th day, they arrived at a massive, isolated agricultural plantation. The fields were fortified with barbed wire fencing. Deep inside, dozens of people were hard at work harvesting crops with sharp sickles. But their movements were deeply unsettling. Their bodies moved with a bizarre, unnatural lag. They staggered and stumbled blindly through the dirt, showing absolutely no signs of conscious awareness. They looked like empty shells, soulless, working in a trance. The two men carried the body straight through the fields. Not a single laborer looked up. It was as if this horrific sight was completely normal to them. At the far end stood a large, windowless concrete hall. They knocked. The door swung open. They carried the body inside and laid it flat on a massive wooden table. The interior of the hall was a living nightmare. Wooden shelves lined the concrete walls, packed with glass jars containing preserved animal specimens, strange roots, and horrifyingly shattered pieces of human bones. A frail, sinister old man approached the table. Their employer, a Macabre, the Haitian term for a dark witch doctor who practices malevolent sorcery. The old man examined the body. He lifted the limp arms, turned the head, peeled open the eyelids. Everything was perfect. A sickening smile spread across his wrinkled face. He paid the two bounty hunters thick stacks of cash and they vanished. Now let me tell you what Angelina did not know. What no doctor could have known. Clairvius was never dead. The morning he collapsed, his own older brother had come to his house offering a truce. They embraced. But the brother had coated his hands in a highly refined, toxic powder provided by the Macabre. As he hugged Clairvius, he rubbed the fine powder directly onto the bare skin of his back. That powder contained a deadly neurotoxin called tetrodotoxin, harvested from the internal organs of the pufferfish. An incredibly microscopic dose of this toxin is powerful enough to completely paralyze the human nervous system. It induces a state of suspended animation. The heart rate drops to an almost undetectable level. Breathing becomes virtually non-existent. To the doctors of 1962, Clairvius appeared clinically dead. But his mind was completely awake, trapped inside a frozen, paralyzed body. Here is what Clairvius later told the police, weeping. 18 years ago, I was completely conscious. My mind was fully awake, but my body was completely paralyzed. I heard the doctor tell my sister Angelina that I was dead. I felt them write out my death certificate. They lifted my body and locked me inside a freezing hospital morgue refrigerator. I spent the entire night trapped in that freezing darkness, fully aware. The next morning they took me to my house. I heard my friends and family weeping over my body. My brothers and sisters were standing right next to me, but I couldn't open my eyes, I couldn't scream, and I couldn't move a single muscle. Then they brought the wooden coffin. As my own siblings were hammering the lid shut, one of the long iron nails went completely off course. It pierced straight through the wood and ripped through my cheek, tearing my flesh open. That nail is the reason I have this scar today. 18 years ago, my loved ones buried me alive. He described being trapped in the casket beneath the earth, waiting for the oxygen to run out so he could finally die. Then the shovels came. The two men dragged him out. He remembered the entire 20-day journey, the hiding, the marching, the cold nights. When the Macabre poured the second liquid down his throat, it felt like an electrical current exploded through his nervous system. The old man chanted, yelled, and suddenly Clairvius's muscles twitched. He opened his eyes. Everything was blurred. He tried to stand, but his body felt like it was made of lead. The Macabre handed him a sharp sickle and dragged him into the fields. The other staggering workers were just like him, empty vessels, completely stripped of their souls and free will. They had all been turned into real-life zombies. Inside his own mind, Clairvius was screaming. He wanted to turn the blade on the Bakr, but his physical body refused to obey. His muscles would only execute the commands of the witch doctor. For 2 agonizing years, under the scorching sun and through the dead of night, Clairvius and the other enslaved zombies slaved away on that plantation, entirely dependent on daily doses of the drug the Bakr fed them. That drug was derived from the datura plant, commonly known as the zombie cucumber. It contains heavy amounts of scopolamine, a chemical that completely obliterates memory, free will, and cognitive reasoning, leaving a person in a hyper-compliant, hypnotic state. After 2 years, another enslaved worker reached his breaking point. In a sudden fit of residual rage, the worker swung his sharp sickle straight across the Bakr's throat, killing him on the spot. With the Bakr dead, the daily drug stopped. The spell was broken. But Clairvius could not go home. He knew exactly who had paid for his zombification. His own biological brother, seeking revenge over the property dispute. If he returned while his brother was still alive, his brother would simply hire another witch doctor to finish the job. So Clairvius vanished for 16 years. He wandered the fringes of the country, taking odd jobs, living as a ghost. He was waiting for his brother to die. In early 1980, word reached him that his brother had passed away. He walked back into his village, and into the market where Angelina slapped his hand away, screaming that he was an imposter. The police arrested him. They laughed at his story. But Clairvius remained calm. Ask my surviving siblings to write down a list of questions that only the real Clairvius Narcisse could possibly know, he said. Bring the list to me and I will provide the answers. The siblings wrote down 10 deeply personal family secrets. Childhood memories, private conversations, things no outsider could ever know. Clairvius answered every single one perfectly. The family wept. The medical anomaly was undeniable. The man sitting in the police station was, without a shadow of a doubt, the real Clairvius Narcisse. 2 years later, a Harvard ethnobotanist named Wade Davis traveled to Haiti and confirmed the science. The pufferfish toxin induced the false death. The datura plant erased the will. Clairvius's brother didn't want to kill him. He wanted to inflict a punishment far worse than death, to strip away his wealth, his freedom, and his soul, turning him into a living corpse. And for 18 horrifying years he succeeded. Clairvius Narcisse watched his own funeral from inside his paralyzed body. He felt the coffin nail tear his cheek. He was buried alive. He was raised as a mindless slave. And then, against all odds, he came back to tell the world. That is the true story of the man who died twice, and lived to terrify us all.